Steel City. Is everybody ready to go? Let's proclaim the greatest radio show.
Welcome, fans, to our Week 11 Fantasy Football Edition. I am your host, Jim Sella. I'm in studio with Jay Dash and Big Easy. How you guys doing?
I'm doing PPR.
Fresh.
PPR all day. We're going to break down some quarterbacks, tight ends, and defenses. You best believe that PPR comes into account in all the decisions we make. So if you ain't in a PPR league, you ain't nothing.
Let's go with the tier one here, the elite. We got Andrew Luck, who's the number one fantasy quarterback still.
Beast.
We got Peyton Manning at St. Louis, Aaron Rodgers versus Philly, Tom Brady at Indy, which is a big game.
Dropped them, and I regret it.
And Drew Brees versus Cincinnati.
All Manning's power comes from his forehead.
I hated Tom Brady, and I dropped him, and I regret it, though. Stay strong, Tom. You got a hot wife.
Tier 2.
Let's move on to tier 2 here. Must plays. Phillip Rivers, Matt Ryan, and Russell Wilson, with Jay Cutler falling out of this group.
Jay Cutler's garbage.
Couldn't believe you had him in tier 2.
He was playing well all season until actually just last week was only his second bad week of the season.
People say, what's wrong with Pittsburgh? What's wrong with Chicago?
They're my pick of the week. Chicago is going to cover -2.5 this week.
Dash is loving them.
We'll see about that.
Let's move on to tier 3 here. This is probably a surprise to you. I got RG3 as the top tier 3 quarterback.
R tier 3.
RG tier 3.
RGT3.
Brah.
There you go. Colin Kaepernick, Cam Newton, and Matt Stafford to round out the third tier.
I agree with Matt Stafford. I like him a lot. I think he's going to have a big game.
Well, he has 6 TDs over his last 3 games, but he also has 4 interceptions in that span. He has 40 or more pass attempts in each of those games and at least 280 yards passing. So he is getting it done, and now that Kelvin Johnson is back, he has 2 big-time receivers in him and Golden Tate to throw to. So I expect Stafford to get better as the season goes along, because we all know that he hasn't lived up to expectations so far this season.
I'm going to go with my boy RGT3. He's going up against Tampa Bay. They give up the 11th most points to fantasy quarterbacks. RGT3 put up 251 yards, 1 TD, and 1 INT in his game against Minnesota last week.
Yeah.
They're usually pretty good against quarterbacks, so the sky's the limit for this boy. He adds another initial to his name. He's going to add another win to his card.
RG Griffin, you got to love him.
RGT3.
You down with PPR? Yeah, RGT3.
Tier 4, we got Big Ben, Jay Cutler, and Eli Manning.
I can't believe you make Ben be in the same tier as Cutler and Manning. It's like embarrassing. Can
Well,
you
you
just put him at the
wanted Big
bottom
Ben-
of tier 3?
You wanted Big Ben in tier 1
'Cause he's-
last week,
He's amazing.
and the only reason he did anything is because of a Hail Mary 80-yard touchdown pass in garbage time. So this is another game. Tennessee's defense has played pretty well in recent weeks, and Big Ben, 5 touchdowns and 4 interceptions in 5 road games, like we were saying. He has only 1 multi-touchdown game on the road, but last week was his first game over 300 yards on the road, so hopefully he carries some momentum over and starts to get things going on the road.
Cutler, you were my quarterback. I cut you.
He got Cutlered.
But stay up. You got a hot wife.
They all do. Even Eli Manning can get a hot wife.
Does he?
Shucks,
I don't know
guys.
anything about his wife.
I don't think he talks to girls.
Does he have a tier 4 wife?
Let's move on to tier 5 here. Josh McCown, Mark Sanchez,
A.K.A. the butt fumble.
Teddy Bridgewater, Sean Hill, Derek Carr, and Drew Stanton, who is filling in for the injured Carson Palmer.
I don't think Sanchez is going to have a game as good as he did last week. People were real high on him. He still didn't really have a great game. He
332 yards.
That's not great in the NFL today.
He did have 2 picks, though.
Right. So Green Bay, much better defense. I think he comes back down to earth a little bit. I think he is maybe worthy of a tier 5. He may drop to tier 6, though, after this week if Green Bay puts a good performance together.
Yeah, I could see that happening, but you go look at these tier 6 quarterbacks and you're like, eh. Anyways, who do you like here in tier 5?
Sean Hill, he's a quarterback, so he's going to have to do something. I mean,
that's spot on analysis.
He's going to get to touch the ball. On every snap, he's going to get to touch the ball. So a play is going to be made by Sean Hill. A tier 5, I'll give him give him a shot.
Why not? He can't be any worse than Austin Davis has over the past few weeks. And if you're going to pick a quarterback out of this tier, yes, I have Josh McCown as the best choice this week because he goes at Washington, who lets up the third most of fantasy quarterbacks. But hey, Sean Hill hasn't shown that he's terrible like the rest of these guys. So, hey, play Sean Hill. Why not?
Yeah.
Tier 6, some terrible football players. Andy Dalton, Zach Mettenberger, Brian Hoyer, Alex Smith, and I'll give a little credit to Ryan Mallett because he hasn't proved he's terrible yet.
I'm going to talk about Ryan Mallett here real quick. I think he has the best chance out of this tier of having a surprisingly good week. There's no real game film on Mallett. Nobody really knows what this guy can do. Nobody really knows what he's good at, what he struggles with. Cleveland's defense does give up the 5th fewest points to fantasy quarterbacks, but that's against quarterbacks they can game plan for and have seen before. So Mallett could have one of those, nobody's ever seen me, I'm going to dominate you for one game.
Well, let me tell you, Cleveland's defense has been playing lights-out football over the past few weeks, and that's why I have Mallett at the bottom of this list. Cleveland, if you need a defense in fantasy, you want to pick up Cleveland's defense because they're probably out there, and they've been playing great football. What do you think, Easy? Andy Dalton for sure? You love Andy Dalton.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Well, Andy Dalton matched up against Drew Brees. I mean, if you ever think there's going to be points scored or
it's a good matchup.
Back and forth, and they're really coming off
a stinker.
I was going to say, a butt something.
A butt fumble?
Yeah, just a butt game. Andy Dalton's been butt pretty much
anything
all
but
season.
Good.
He had 0 TD in 3 of his last 4 games. He 2 TDs and 6 interceptions in his last 3 games. Only 3 multiple touchdown games this season, but all 3 have come in the past 6 weeks. So that means in the past 6 weeks, he has 2 touchdowns in more in 3 of those games and 0 touchdowns in 3 of those games. So he's really hit or miss, but when it is a hit, it's not a huge hit.
Well, it's garbage night here at my house, so if we just put Andy Dalton out on the curb, I think we could solve Cincinnati's problems at quarterback. All right, let's move it along to some tight ends. Who we got in Tier 1?
Tier 1, the usuals, Jimmy Graham, Rob Gronkowski, Julius Thomas, Greg Olsen, and Antonio Gates.
All beast tight ends, but I have a feeling after this it's going to get tough because there's not too many good tight ends this year.
Yeah, really, Greg Olsen and Antonio Gates came into the season not as elite tight ends. People didn't know how good they would be, especially Antonio Gates at the back end of his career. But they have played well this season and are deserving of this tier. Tier 2, the must-starts right now, just Martellus Bennett, and I still have Jordan Reed on this versus Tampa Bay. He only had 1 catch last game with RG3 coming back, RGT3 or whatever you call him.
RGT3.
But he's still in the Tier 2 for now. I want to see one more game if RG3 can get him involved. Coming off a bye last week, I'm expecting a bounce-back game from Jordan Reed.
Bold spread statement.
Tier 3, Dwayne Allen, Larry Donnell, Jared Cook, and Kyle Rudolph, who is questionable right now, but he looks like he's coming back this week.
I like Kyle Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer, especially if he can come back this week. It's getting a little closer to Christmas time. Somebody with a great last name like that, he's going to be pumped up. He's going to get that red nose out and probably score some touchdowns for Santa Claus.
He's a good tight end. We'll have to see how Bridgewater can produce with him, see if he can get him the ball. But this is a great matchup in his return. He's going into Chicago, who lets up the most of fantasy tight ends. So if Teddy Bridgewater's having problems getting the ball to his receivers, Greg Jennings pretty consistently mediocre, but he needs a big target, and Kyle Rudolph could be that guy.
Nobody in Tier 3 impresses me. When I think of Cook going up against Denver, when I hear Cook, I think about eating something, so that's about it.
Tier 4, Michael Rivera, Kobe Fleener, Travis Kelce, and Delaney Walker, who is questionable, and he's not expected to play versus Pittsburgh. Their backup is Chase Kaufman. If you have Walker and he's out and there's nothing out there, I still wouldn't want Chase Kaufman, but if he's the only thing, pick him up.
I have a special place in my heart for a tight end you have yet to mention. I will remain silent.
What about Kobe Fleener? He's going up against New England. They give up the 13th most to fantasy tight ends. He had 4 catches for 77 yards and a touchdown last week on 11 targets. He's got 4 touchdowns over his past 7 games, which is pretty good, but 5 targets or less in 6 and 9 games, so I guess it's maybe hit or miss. It's either big game or nothing.
Yeah, he's being targeted, or he's not being targeted much, but the one good thing about it is Andrew Luck's a great quarterback, and he doesn't need huge targets to get him the ball. Let's move on to Tier 5. I'm guessing the tight end is in this tier that you want to hear about. We got Austin Seferian-Jenkins, Vernon Davis, Zach Ertz, and Heath Miller.
It's your number 1, Austin Seferian-Jenkins.
You love this guy, huh?
I was watching a game, and he caught a touchdown.
Yeah, he had 5 catches last week for 30 yards.
And a touch.
And
Is
a
that
touchdown.
touch? 8, so what's that, 13? No.
8 and 6, that's 14. It depends on what your league scoring is, I guess.
PPR, what do you mean it depends? It's PPR when we're talking here. So, yes, Austin stole my heart last week. Yeah, I heard you mention him. When you mentioned him, I said to myself, who's this joker? I watched him last week. He caught a touchdown. And he's in Tier 5, I would have him above Kyle Rudolph.
Ooh, that's a tough call
Austin
right there.
Severian before Kyle Rudolph all day.
Listen,
Sorry, but
that's fine. Seferian-Jenkins had 9 targets last week, so McCown, his first week back, he was looking his way. He has 2 TDs in his past 3 games, so this could be a great game for him. He has a good matchup at Washington, who lets up the 9th most of fantasy tight ends. Jenkins, or should I say Seferian-Jenkins, I don't know how you want to be called. Just pick one last name, please.
ASJ, PPR.
Please believe.
He could be a nice fill-in tight end this week.
What about our boy Heath Miller?
Tough for Heath
Poor
Miller.
guy being used as a blocker, not getting a chance to catch. What's happened to Vernon Davis? How did he completely fall off the map this year?
Vernon, this is
He's probably on drugs, but go ahead.
2014's a wasted season for Vernon Davis. I mean, if you get anything out of him right now for fantasy, if you're in a position where you're still playing him, if you're getting 5 points out of him, you better be happy because he's getting nothing done.
I think he's in a contract year, which is surprising that he's not doing anything. Maybe that's why Jim Harbaugh doesn't want to pay him.
Yeah, just don't throw him the ball, and then you don't have to pay him.
Believe it. What about Tier 6 here?
Final tier, we got Brent Selleck, who finally made an appearance this season. Not literally, he's been playing all season, but just hasn't shown up in the stats. Then we got Ebron from Detroit, Jermaine Gresham, Tim Wright, and John Carlson.
Well, last I checked, Ebron's questionable.
I seen he was probable earlier today, so unless that changed midday, then I'm not quite sure. But that's pretty much all we got to say about this last tier. I guess if you want to say something, Tim Wright, he has 0 catches in 3 of his last 6 games. But in the other 3 games, he has 3 TDs. So he is a complete hit-or-miss guy. You could do worse. It's a good matchup against Indy. New England's going to be passing the ball a ton, but he might not even see the field. Who knows?
I thought Brent Selleck got hurt last week, no?
Brent Selleck, I did not see a tag on him.
Okay. Just double check, make sure Brent Selleck's healthy. If you got to go.
Well, hey,
somebody.
Listen, with Mark Sanchez, Zach Ertz has done nothing, and Brent Selleck actually had over 100 yards receiving last week, so it could be Selleck that Sanchez likes more. We'll have to see.
He just maybe, I could have swore I see him tweak a knee or something last week.
Maybe he did. Sit him.
Woo!
What about these defenses? You got 5 of them for us?
Yeah, 5 defenses that may be available in your league.
5 key Ds.
Let's see here. We got Cleveland versus Houston.
PPDs.
Pittsburgh at Tennessee. Tennessee versus Pittsburgh.
You have the same defenses against each other. I guess you don't. I guess you think it's going to go under this week.
No,
PPDs.
not necessarily. Teams can put up 30 points, and the defense can still have a good game. I mean, sacks, turnovers, 1 touchdown, you have a good game. Then we got Minnesota at Chicago and Green Bay versus Philly. I've done this before, actually, and had 2 of the teams playing each other in these 5 defenses. So you should have made fun of me weeks ago.
So you'll have Lawrence Timmons at quarterback against the middle linebacker for Tennessee.
Well, let's
and
take a
they'll
look
just keep
here.
running against each other.
It's not bad. It's not.
Tennessee's given up the 12th most to fantasy defenses. Pittsburgh has 8 sacks over their last 2 games. They had 0 turnovers last week, but they had 13 in their previous 7 games. They had 3 TDs in that span, and you know how LeBeau is against rookie quarterbacks. But then let's take a look at Tennessee here. Pittsburgh lets up the 15th most of fantasy defenses, so that's not that great either. It's about middle of the league. But look what Tennessee's doing. They have 11 sacks and 2 turnovers in their past 2 home games. Home games alone, just 2 home games, 11 sacks. That's huge.
I guess that blows you out of the water easy with your no pass rush for Tennessee.
And then
I haven't watched him and noticed.
and
Still garbage.
we've said it earlier, outside of Carolina, the Steelers have 46 points in 4 road games. So, yes, I like both of these defenses this week. Although I did pick Pittsburgh to score 30 points. But if Tennessee gets 5 sacks and a turnover, they're still going to have a decent day.
Well, that's it. If you have Pittsburgh, pick up Tennessee. If you have Tennessee, pick up Pittsburgh. If you don't have either one, pick up one of these other guys. All that matters is you get a defense that helps you win. And the thing that matters most is you tune it into the spread.
Do work.
SPREAD.
PPR.
Please believe. Follow us on Twitter, bet_the spread. Check out our Facebook page. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We live, eat, sleep, breathe, all the other things you can do. PPR. Get some.
Peace.